we hold these truths to be self-evident. Corporations are not people. Money is not speech. This is not a Christian nation. And the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Welcome to Disorderly Conduct.
It is the everyday things that people make exceptions for that are really truly lead to the awfulness that we saw in the Holocaust. Right? It's you saying, yeah, I'll forge those numbers. Right? It's somebody else saying, you know what? I know you're, espousing these beliefs, but I'm going to throw you a great party and design you wonderful uniforms. I'm going to make you appealing.
I'm going to host you on a podcast and then not be sorry for it.
These little incremental decisions where everybody gets to say, it's a little plausible deniability. It's not a big deal, right? Like all I did was support the fucking regime is what you did, motherfucker, right? Hey, look, month of November, this is the month that we set aside to honor our veterans, right? And as a veteran, I get that. I served 14 deployments, 21 years. I do have an understanding of sacrifice, and I know what service looks like, okay? But the fact is service isn't limited to the uniform or the battlefield, and I want to use our opportunity here on Disorderly Conduct to expand that lens. And so, look, I want to take the opportunity to welcome you guys to Heroes of Humanity, all right? And we're doing this month to hone in on the people that didn't wear a uniform, that really stepped in and leaned into being a hero because it's the right thing to do, right? They leaned into just what, there's this, there used to be a conversation, you guys know this, there used to be a conversation about, are people generally good or are people generally bad? This is no longer something that I entertain. And the reason is because we have witnessed measurably over time, a long period of time, that we are getting better. We are getting less violent. We are getting more conscious, right? We are being more inclusive, right? We're gaining understanding in so many different places. And, it's asynchronous, as you guys know. But this is why it matters to me so much to really recognize folks that stuck their neck out. And there are lots of them, right? But they stuck their neck out because, man, I care about people. Man, I cannot stomach that injustice, right? I won't allow it on my watch. And those people inspire me as a Ranger, as a Green Beret, as a human. Those people inspire me. That's where I get it from. That's where I get my desire. That's where I get my hope. That's where I get everything from people like this. So I think this is a very important thing to focus on for the month of November. I love my vets, right? But I think my vets will agree with me when we say this is something we have to recognize. Like, let's look at these people. Let's look at these people and let's honor these people for the month of November. All right. So, look, the woman that I chose, Irina Sendler, a hero, unquestionably a hero. And I don't even know where to start. She's a Polish social worker. She smuggled 2,500 children out of the Warsaw Ghetto, right? She was not allowed into the Warsaw Ghetto. So she says to herself, well, unacceptable. Obviously, I need to forge my paperwork. You know what I mean? And just thank you, strong women, dude. Like this is the deal with strong women, right? Like they see a way around and they get it done. And this saved 2,500 babies. And listen, guys, the thing that makes this so fucking emotional for me is when we, what does it look like to be a fucking hero? What does it look like to stand up when the worst of humanity is coming out? What does that look like? In her case, it looked like having to medicate infants, right? Because she knew that they would be starved to death or killed. She's injecting them, right? As, mind you, she's not a nurse, right? She's a social worker who has forged her paperwork, and now she's actually doing nurse shit, you know, behind enemy lines, for lack of a better term. I mean, I have never had to do anything like that. The moment you're administering something like that to a child, you know that there's a risk that that baby's gonna die because you fucked it up, right? And you're doing everything you can to make sure you don't. Dude, she's in here and she's doing this. She's doing it over and over and over again to get these babies away from fucking Nazis, right? Penny, for your thoughts.
Just was she sedating them so that she could smuggle them out and they would be
The
quiet?
ones that she had to keep quiet, right? So you have these babies that are recently born. They do what babies do, right? They just cry. So they're dating them. They're carrying kids out in fucking coffins, right? Pretending like they'd already died.
I think I was going to say this on the last episode when we were talking about the things going on and just, humanity and what it means. I think, it's undeniable. Like we can other people and there's a reason why you have to other them. You know what I mean? There's a reason why you have to use that to psychologically condition a population to accept brutality, especially against children. I think that's something that generally unites us all. Like it's the reason why music transcends language. It's the reason why soldiers come back from war with PTSD, with a moral injury, because regardless, we can deny it all we want to, but we are innately connected, and that it crosses every ethnic boundary, every racial boundary, every language across the globe. There is something innately connected within the human species. People say the human race, if you will, but I think children. They tend to definitely sort of walk the line on what you can get past people or what you can get people to do. And it's funny that we're talking about sedating children, because sometimes when I'm having conversations on TikTok, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think people understand what they're advocating for. Like, they don't really understand the reality of what is being beckoned here. Because imagine trying to navigate a lawless society with a child so young you can't shut them up. And then you have to turn to decisions like this. And, I'm sure people could judge her actions, like sedating children without medical knowledge. Hopefully, the math and their weight to do the right calculations on that medication without killing them. But those are the decisions that have to be made when the poorer character are in charge. And, is there a likelihood that you kill them? Yeah. But what's the likelihood they die if you don't? And so you're forced to make these kind of decisions. And I can only imagine how that would weigh on her spirit for the rest of her life if there were casualties as a result of her medication. But what other choice do you have? Right? You just walk away.
And amazing things, by the way, from Irina, right? Very important to note, every single person that she rescued, every one of those children that she got out of the Warsaw Ghetto, she wrote their names down, and it was not something that was safe to do. She wrote their name down and buried them in her neighbor's backyard, because her thought was, right, this is early on, right? So she's not necessarily informed about the fucking mass genocide that's about to take place, right? She's thinking that I can write these names down and I can eventually reunite them with their families, right? And so you can imagine why I said, in the beginning, I've cried writing this episode, kind of going through this, because holy fuck, bro, like, you had to hide these children's names in a fucking jar to not be caught. Now, wait till you hear the end of the story about Miss Summer. If you guys don't know, and I'm just going to skip to the end for just a second here so you can, for our listeners, she was caught by the Nazis and sentenced to death. Wait till you find out how that ends up. Stick around to the end of the episode to hear how it turned out, because it's an amazing story, and it should inspire everyone listening.
I'll have you know, he also didn't share this episode with me because I think the intent was we all cry on camera. This way.
Well, it's so incredible what she did, right? Like, hey, okay, you're not allowed in here.
I love this series though because I do think it speaks to the enduring nature of the human spirit, right? And what that means in different contexts is in the decisions that people have to make when they're put to it. But unbelievably, people do act with character and integrity and self-sacrifice more often than not. So I do agree with the fact that humanity is more likely good than not.
Yeah, yeah. I
What do you
mean, and Fingers, we've talked about this extensively personally, right? We're perpetual optimists,
Yeah.
this has to be why, doesn't it? Right? Like just what you see
World is
perpetually
big.
from people over and over and over again, to the point where we've got cars. I don't know about you guys, but this happens to me all the time. I look at something and I go, oh, I have no idea how that works. I don't know how I got it. I don't know how it works. Right. But it's making my life better. These are things that were made available because
There's a couple of things that come to mind. I mean, when you're talking about children, obviously the thing that leaps to my mind is the thing that jumps to mind for me is, our the Black Hawk Down, like Chicago apartment building raid, where they went through and zip tied children, and to the point of that you were making, Bobby, about, authoritarian regimes want you to abrogate your own humanity, to see people as less than to other people, and, as we all are familiar with the book On Freedom, I jumped in so I could beat Jesse to the punch talking about the kippah and the lib. And, the point that I think about that is the damage. When we talk about othering, the idea or like the first thought might be that the point of that is to dehumanize the other, the person that we're othering. No, the point is to dehumanize the one doing the othering, to
Right.
take away your own sense of humanity, to take away that viewpoint, because the next atrocity becomes easier because now your own viewpoint, your empathy, your compassion has been deadened. And, to riff on the analogy in the book, for those that don't know, kupa is a corpse, is a body, is just something inanimate and physical that can be moving around. Alive is something living with a soul that is unpredictable. And kupa are much easier for a regime to move around, dead bodies, than lives who have their own ambitions, their own objectives, their own goals. And for those of us that are trying to resist authoritarianism, it is imperative that we retain ourselves as lib and not become kupa. So those are the things that occur to me. And, specifically, there's somebody that I know on TikTok, that's kind of how he'll open conversations with conservatives on the app. Yeah, how do you feel about zip tying children? And the number of times that the response starts with, well, is dispiriting.
It is. And you hear the effectiveness of the othering just to the degree that it's been done right now. Right. I mean, you hear them say, well, I've heard everything from immigrants on the building to, they weren't zip tied. And it's like I think it wasn't just as long. I was in another live and I'm like, number one, there are plenty of instances verifiable on video of them zip tying children, whether it was courthouses or other raids. It doesn't matter necessarily whether they were or not zip tied in Chicago. One, Chicago has so much problematic shit going on with it. The zip tying children, right, is after you have to just flat out ignore all the other constitutional violations that took place to get there. But it's verifiable that they've been zip tying children, very young children, and some is. And don't even get me started on the Alien Enemies Act on the age of 14, like 14-year-old males. I have a 17-year-old boy. You zip tie him, I'll kill you. That's flat out. That is absolutely real. Okay. But it really is about your own humanity, because otherwise they would just do it. Right. They have to condition you. They have to take away your humanity. You have to be willing to abandon your humanity. Otherwise it wouldn't matter.
What do you think?
I think that's a key point, and I'm so pleased, Fingers, that you brought that up, right? Like that you shine some light on that, and then you guys so effectively, I think, discussed it, because that is the basis of Nazism, fascism, right? All the way around. The only way this happens, and I got to be honest with you guys, right? And not just for you guys as co-hosts, but also for the listeners. I have absolutely seen the worst of humanity, and I don't have very many reasons to be as optimistic as I am, beyond the fact that if you really set those things aside, you can actually observe objectively that we are headed in the right direction. And we just have to continue to support that. And when we see deviations from that, we got to fix them, right? And here's proof of it. 1910, Irina Sendler was born in Otwat, Poland. Her father was a doctor who treated everyone, Jews and Christians, during a typhus outbreak. He caught the disease himself and died when Irina was 7. She lost her father. Before he passed, he told her something that would define her life, and that is, if you see someone drowning, you must try to save them, even if you can't swim.
Just even question, I'm gonna give you a chance to chime in before I say something else.
No, just kind of soak it in. That's incredible. I don't think anyone, even ourselves or anyone listening to this podcast, really understands the courage under threat of life, right? The idea that you could risk your life consistently, time and time again, to save as many people as possible is a courage that few know, and it's not something that I know. So it's something that I kind of sit in awe and inspired and also contemplative, right? What would I do in that situation? Would I have been so brave so as to risk my neck for kids I never met? I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna expose me, tattletale on me. I don't know if they're spies. Like, there's so many ifs that we don't know, right? And we just assume that it's as simple as getting in, taking the kid, bringing them out. But there's so many things that would never occur to us in those kinds of situations. So I think my mind is kind of ruminating and pondering upon what the specifics were each day that she did this, right? Because we just don't know. We'll never understand, even if there was a movie, even if there's a book, which, as we're learning now, which is absolutely incredible. But I'm just kind of giving honor and respect to what she did, because that's insane. So yeah.
I think that's why these conversations are so important, right? Because and why a thorough understanding of history, the conditions that existed, and the choices that people did make is important. Because you're right. I mean, we can only speculate on what we do, right? But if we don't inform ourselves with history, then we're really just sort of speculating on a fantasy at that point, right? And in which most people place themselves as the hero. You know what I mean? But and it's going to be informed by a variety of factors. I mean, I have 3 kids myself, and we've talked extensively, I think all of us in this group, about what is going to transpire and what our plans are for it. And many people will choose to leave with their kids, right? And that's a completely acceptable choice to make. It's especially depending on your family structure, whether or not your kids have somewhere safe to go, whether there's another capable adult to care for them. And then, some people don't have kids and are in position, and are able and willing to make different choices. So there's a lot, I think, that comes down to it, and including just in the moment making. And if you've never operated under fight or flight, which a lot of people in this nation have, I think people also misconstrue the number of citizens in this nation that do operate under fight or flight on a regular basis, due to the ongoing oppression of minority and marginalized communities. It is quite literally similar to living in a war zone, but with different forms of oppression and different sources of authority and violence. But, political violence comes in a lot of ways, and a lot of times it's coming down in the form of policy and policing, which obviously we've discussed. But that does inform the way that people make decisions, and whether or not they freeze or fight or flight. Somebody told me a long time ago, hesitation will get you killed. So just remember that.
Big facts. Big facts.
But anyway, it is a decision a lot of people will have to make in the moment, and they'll be faced with one they've never had to make before. But like I said, I think having these conversations and informing people on history and giving them these little bits of places to look for how those things manifest and sort of decisions need to be made will at least help them make a decision more expediently than they might otherwise make it. So
We say in the military, fast wrong is better than a slow right.
sure.
Move fast.
Hey, look, I want to get into this, man. I want to definitely make sure we maintain the plot with Miss Sendler. So please weigh in, and we'll jump back in.
I think I'm ready for you to continue.
Okay.
Personally.
All right. Hey, look. So, look, the ethic: if you see someone drowning, you must try and save them, even if you can't swim, which came from her father. It was one that she carried into adulthood. And when Germany invaded Poland in 1939, she was working in Warsaw's social welfare department. And that job gave her legal access to food, medicine, and supplies. But she watched as the Nazis forced more than 400,000 Jews into a section of the city barely larger than Central Park. Yeah. And oh boy, I know Jesse's going to have some comments on that. I'm very interested. But look, conditions were hell, right? As you can imagine, you stuff 400,000 people in a space like that, disease, starvation, and executions. Most of the world looked away, right? That's what people were doing. They were actively looking away. Now it's not the same as it is today. We'll give it that, right? But Irina did not look away. She saw mothers begging her to save their children, to take them out. Take my fucking baby out of here, because they knew that they were going to die. She made a choice that could have, and at the risk of spoliation, almost cost her her life. She joined an underground resistance network called Zagota, the Polish Council to Aid Jews. Okay. Discussion cues here, guys. Things we got to talk about. There's a moment, and I think this is important because we're here in Veterans Day. It's fast approaching. There's a moment when duty collides with conscience. Where does that line live for you?
Well, I get to take advantage of the fact that I was never in the military, so I was never forced to make that choice. So I've always had been fortunate enough to never be put in that position.
I think you don't necessarily have to have served to have duty collide with conscience. And there are things, there are laws in states called Good Samaritan laws. Certainly, if you cause them harm in the majority of states, you are required by law to give aid. But there are some states where even if you didn't cause the harm, you're required by law to give. And so
Yeah.
it is something heavily debated, especially in the legal community, because giving aid can often open yourself up to liability. If I give you CPR, not break a rib.
Yeah. I mean, I have the luxury of never having been duty and conscience been at odds with each other.
Yeah.
Right. I'm being asked to do something that was, well, yeah, we're not going to go down that. I mean, it's not in a situation that any lives were at risk. I've been in situations professionally where somebody was asking me to put numbers on financial statements that perhaps not aligned with reality.
Well, no. Here's the thing. I gotta push back. I think that's a very much right. Like my perspective is very limited, right? As a former serviceman, I spent 21 years in the military, dude. That's what we were doing, right? That was the conversation. But what I realize very heavily right now is, and Jesse, I think you and I have talked about this. It is the everyday things that people make exceptions for that are really truly lead to the awfulness that we saw in the Holocaust, right? It's you saying, yeah, I'll forge those numbers, right? It's somebody else saying, you know what? I know you're, espousing these beliefs, but I'm going to throw you a great party and design you wonderful uniforms, right? And I'm going to make you appealing.
I'm going to host you on a podcast and then not be sorry for it.
These little incremental decisions where everybody gets to say, it's a little plausible deniability. Oh, it's not a big deal, right? Like all I did was support the fucking regime is what you did, motherfucker, right?
Yeah.
You subscribe to Spotify. I hate to be that guy right now, but I'm gonna go ahead and stump it, right? They're out here supporting ICE. ICE is doing illegal raids. They are doing no-knock warrants in civilian clothes. Listen, hey, and this is a message for ICE too. I want to say this out loud. If you come for me, you better have a fucking badge and you better announce yourself or you will be fucking gunned down.
I think that definitely I'd like to give credence or due to her father and the way that she's raised, because I think that is going to inform a lot of us on what kind of decisions and where duty collides with conscience for us is our upbringing. So, yeah, I don't think that, my dad he was born in the 40s, so he watched the entire civil rights movement as a teenager and has always been a bit lawless in nature, as you might can tell. So I don't think there's any question for me that duty would never take precedence over, duty as far as like conforming with legality. I would ever take precedence over my conscience, but some people aren't raised that way.
I guess I'd make the argument that I think one adheres to duty because of consciousness in the first place, right? So generally speaking, we see as duty as aligning with our consciousness, right? Like individuals who join the medical practice and become doctors or nurses, right? Their conscious pushes them to want to help people. So they take on the burden of duty in order to fulfill this, right? I would argue the same is true for service members. They have a conscience, they want to protect their homeland, they want to protect their families, they want to protect the ideals of the American democracy, right? So their conscious weighs and pushes them, not always, but generally speaking, to serve. And unfortunately, like many things in life, these things tend to collide, right? And we always like to think that, consciousness, or your conscious rather, will supersede duty. But I think this really depends on the individual and whether or not it's been developed properly, right? Whether or not it's been exercised properly. Fingers makes a really good point. Him and I are very privileged to not have, been put in a situation where we have to serve, right? So I think because we haven't been confronted necessarily in the same way a service member would with that collision of duty and their conscious, it's difficult to say what an individual would do without having to being put there in the first place, if that makes sense. Again, there's, I think that's kind of an extreme example too, because like Finger said, we probably also encountered this in our own lives, right? Like you asking them to cook the books, right? And Fingers like, no, I'm not gonna do that. But I think it's one thing I do want to point out is sometimes, Mayhem, you asked, where's that line? And the difficult thing is that sometimes it's not a line, it's no man's land, where you're not sure what direction is duty and conscious, right? Sometimes sometimes the line is very clear, right? But I think in situations like this, I would argue that to us it's so blatant in like retrospect that clearly you need to save these kids. But to her, I don't think the option was so clear. I think she had the opportunity because of her father, clearly, in her past, to develop a very clear, strong conscience that not others people don't. Right? And I think like for her, it's very possible that her neighbors, or rather coworkers, who are also nurses, were like, well, my conscience and duty tell me I have to protect my family.
Right.
And these get very complicated very quickly. And I think the only point I really want to point out is I think where they collide depends on the individual and what experience you have with this kind of stuff. This is why we see a lot of Germans were very silent when they saw their Jewish neighbors be pulled away, because they didn't understand, right? They didn't know. But individuals like Irina, is that her name, right?
Yeah, Irina Sendler.
Yeah, I mean, incredible, not just conscious, but bravery and courage.
Dude, I mean, to the nth degree, right? The more I read about this woman, right? And all right, I think we're at the point in the podcast here. Where are we? 30 minutes? Yeah, we're fair enough. We're far enough. Look, guys, the Nazis caught her, right? Smuggling kids out of the ghetto, and they sentenced her to fucking death. And, they tortured her, right? They broke her fucking legs. They broke her feet, trying to get her to give up the members of the resistance. And she didn't crack, right? So let's talk about strong women, right? Let's talk about what real fucking strength is, right? All you got to do is say a couple names and they'll stop hitting your feet with fucking hammers, right? No, the answer is no. The stakes are too high, right? So here's what happens, guys. The group that she's working with, right? The SS officer in charge of executions, they fucking bribed him. And on the day of her execution, he disclosed that to her. Your life has been saved by your comrades. They paid me a sum of money. And he put her on the fucking executed list and released her the day of her execution. And she continued to smuggle children into safety. Okay. This is a fucking hero, right? For all of us to look up to respect, okay, we got Columbus Day. You sailed up onto the fucking shore. Good job, right? Can we get a Sendler Day?
Talking about
real soon.
Talking about the conflict between duty and conscience, the thing that occurs to me right now is the suspension of SNAP benefits. People are going to be under stress to feed their kids, to feed themselves. And, people who work at grocery stores or in places where food is available might be presented with the choice between their quote duty, letting their employer know that they've seen somebody take something without paying for it, and their conscience, which is being aware that that person might be needing to feed their kids. That's just, I dropped that out as something for people to
Yeah,
meditate.
that's a great example of where it starts, right? Where we start making these decisions that ultimately put us in a position to make the tough ones, like the real tough
Yeah.
ones.
The other thing, when, you were mentioning about how the Germans kind of were the frogs in water, right? They didn't really have a strong resistance. And I'm thinking about where we are now and thinking about what we talked about getting people to abrogate their own humanity. There's a reason we talk about the French resistance and the Polish resistance, right? Because those were countries that were invaded. They were not able to be subjected to this slowly turn up the temperature in the water kind of thing.
And
They
you
were
see a
not.
much tougher resistance in that motherfucker.
That is such a brilliant point. That is such a brilliant point. And it's one that, if it clip this, make sure it gets out to the fucking masses, because that is so important for people to realize.
And
It
the
is
reason
different.
I say that is because we in this country are fucking frogs in water, going back to the
100%.
right? Which means that depending how far this gets, it's going to require greater effort to spur us to actually do something rather than
100%.
acquiesce and just like inch by inch be dragged to a place that we would have never considered. I mean, I'm sure that these people that said, well, about kids being zeptide, if you'd asked them 5 years ago whether they would ever countenance that, they would, fuck no.
Yeah.
But
That's
the
ridiculous.
Overton window has been dragged over such that they're just
Yeah, it's in the
willing to compromise little by little by little.
And it's funny because I think Jesse was on your podcast. We were talking about the role of social media and the rise of authoritarianism. I'm not your podcast, on your live.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, and I made the joke about, can't wait to see how people react when TikTok saves the United States. And I meant that as a joke, mostly about how we all met each other and the different organizations that have spurred up to fight this regime and have connected and continue to broadcast their message and connect with people across the nation on social media platforms, but also because of the conversations that we're having on these lives, right? So when they give the right, and then you position it as, what if these were your kids? And well, it wouldn't be my kids because what? But it gives us a chance to confront the dissonance, right? And he was telling his mom yesterday about TikTok bans that I caught. And I've never caught more TikTok bans than when I posed the question to people who excuse this behavior. What are you going to do? Like, let's just say you want to get rid of the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. So, unreasonable search and seizure, sure, go ahead. No due process and no right to counsel. Understand that, let's say you successfully eliminate these things among people of your kind of thinking, right? It don't matter. But now I'm in charge. And I know, as somebody who has litigated sexual misconduct and molestation for the past couple of years, that the number one predator against women and children are white Christian, straight white Christian men. So now, you know what? You have a cross chain, you have a cross tattoo, better cover that motherfucker up, because when I see you, rendition. You know what I mean? Like, that's just because I think you're running a child sex ring. And they get so fucking mad. What? No due process. You don't get an attorney. CCOT. Straight to jail. But I catch a ban talking about white men on TikTok. That right there, guaranteed ban every time. Hate speech. Weird. But anyway, they can't fathom that when I put it in that context. It just really pisses people off, because then they have to confront the fact that, damn, maybe I do like those amendments.
Yeah, I got to be honest. Like, okay, these have been broken. I'm starting to see your point. It's way more important.
Yeah.
I'm punching your mouth. We're gonna fight about this.
But anyway, I say all that to say that I think the conversations are important, just like what we've talked about. Fingers.
No, they absolutely are. Yeah, I was
fingers about the importance of this podcast and civic education in general. The neglect of civic education in the United States and how it's contributed to where we are. But I think that the ability to connect so easily has definitely had some pluses, and people should continue to engage in honest conversation about what decisions are going to be made, or what decisions we're going to be forced to make in the future. And you already see that happening in the negotiating taking place with those things right now.
But go meet your neighbor.
No, for sure. Go meet your neighbor.
Go.
That was never meant to negate.
Dude, Ron is just
Strengthening of.
Dude, you're just coming in here. You're just dunking. like everything is a fucking win, dude. You're coming from the free
You
throw
know,
line. Yes, meet your fucking
But you
neighbor.
know what, though? It's a two-pronged situation here, right? Because absolutely, we talk about strengthening communities and resilience and
Yeah.
how that re-engages people in the civic process, but also how it creates resilience in the face of oppression. But eventually, the nation will have to reconnect itself nationally. And I think that's where, I mean, we have what? At least Midwest, Northeast, Southeast, right here. It's half the United States in a podcast. And we only have some conversations on camera.
yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I got to be honest, man. One of the things, connecting with you in DC and like, um, majestic, what a beautiful, but connecting with you guys and actually having those conversations one on one, just the sheer idea, I'm showing up for another person, for a cause, from all the way from where I live, right? And the same thing for Ron, right?
It's actually, I talked about last night. Given just the context of connection here and especially kids. I don't know how tuned in y'all are to what's taking place in DC and then the various, say, curfews and things being put in place, but they've captured the narrative to the point that the mayor, Muriel Bowser, hi ma'am, has essentially bent the knee in a lot of regards and in some statements almost semi-praised this administration, the occupation of DC, and they've instituted curfews for juveniles, right? Juveniles that this administration has sought to charge as adults with they right now they have legislation on the table to lower the age for which they charge these young black children as adults for crimes, and they criminalized the youth in DC. And so they instituted a new curfew the other night. It was announced via tweet, if I'm not mistaken.
Truth Social.
No, and this is the mayor of DC. And so anyway, some of the organizations that we've connected with up there, including one that I'm in, DC Alliance Against Trump's Agenda in DC, Lawyers Against Trump. 4 of the organizers in our group were arrested last night as they monitored the situation as law enforcement attempted to crack down on juveniles in Navy Yard in District 1, and they were arrested. One of which just had a rotator cuff surgery, and the arrest is on camera, and she's screaming in pain. And they were arrested. Originally, they were told under a noise complaint, which by statute you cannot. It's a civil violation. You cannot effect full custody arrest. Funny, I was still awake whenever one of the DC Alliance organizers hit our group chat, and I was like, they got the right ones tonight because I know just the group. And so I alerted DC Lawyers Against Trump, who went down to the precinct and chased them. We blew up the phone lines. We put it on TikTok. We got the 5051 National to collab, and to the point that they finally released all 4 organizers at about 3:45 this morning. But these are the sort of decisions that people have to make, right? These are adults, obviously, but they understand what's happening against the youth in DC, and they decided that they would go, essentially be a legal observer, right, to watch how police are treating the juveniles in DC. And so I just think that, if you're looking for a spark of hope and how people are going to make these decisions, I think you already see it across the nation where people, in particular, are definitely looking out for the youth, but are looking out for each other. And without the connection that we have, like I'm, obviously normally I'm 10 hours plus from DC, and right now I think I'm about 4.5. But and of course, if they had not been released, I would be in DC right now taking this podcast from the car. But it's just the simple fact that the simple act of organizing on a collaborative basis regularly enable us to put enough pressure on them to. The initial word was they were going to hold them until Monday, until the first appearance, right? But we sent 4 attorneys down there and put pressure on them until they released them at 3:45 in the morning with no bond because they don't have money bonds. But there's no cash bond in DC, which is something that they're trying to overturn. But anyway,
Of course,
I just want to highlight the fact that people are already sort of like looking out for the youth here and across the nation, and I think that in particular for women like the one we're speaking about, well, for women in general, I think you don't fuck with kids. I think there's no quicker way to piss women off and then start fucking with children. So I think you will see people making the hard decisions, and the more we normalize it, the more we encourage it, because courage is contagious. I think the more you'll see people making decisions to align with their conscience and not what's considered duty.
man, courage is That's something that you said, Austin, and I would encourage you to continue to say it because it inspires me every time I hear it. Courage is fucking contagious.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So is
People
cowardice.
are, huh?
So is cowardice.
That's right. That's right.
Mm.
That is absolutely right. So is fear, right? There's a reason why morale is important, and in the military and in corporations and business
Yeah.
and
What do they call that shit now? Culture.
And I say not to be a cynic, but just to say, each individual has a decision about which signal they're going to broadcast.
Right. Right. I saw a quote earlier this week, guys. It said something to the effect of one of the most powerful things that we have is the ability to choose our attitude. And man, I'm a yeah, I'm a bitchy motherfucker, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like it landed, it landed hard. I was like, oh, well, I choose to be a motherfucker, right? Like that was my, it's the joke I'm telling. Legitimately, I'm realizing like I'm not necessarily choosing the best act. Hey, look, I want to jump back into Irina, right? And I hope that's a name that is burned into the names of anybody listening to this. To get into the ghetto, she forged credentials, listed herself as a nurse checking for typhus outbreaks.
Call back to
The
that.
Germans feared disease more than they feared justice, and she used that fear as her cover. Once inside, she built a network. Some kids were carried out in burlap sacks, others in toolboxes, coffins, ambulances. Babies sedated so they wouldn't cry. Every single child got a new Polish name and fake baptismal certificate. The paperwork was so detailed that many survived undetected for years. And here's the part for me that's really tough, and we've already talked about a little bit. She kept the real names too. She wrote them on cigarette papers, sealed in glass jars, and buried them under an apple tree in a neighbor's yard, hoping to reunite them with their families after. So, when I say I was like shedding tears reading this, and we'll get to the good stuff, and I know that the readers are going to start if they haven't already, right? The listeners are already like starting to Google this lady, and that's the fucking point of talking about her and all of the other heroes that you guys are going to bring up over the course of the next 4 weeks. I mean, it should inspire people. It should get people talking. It should have everyone thinking about what it means to be a part of society in a meaningful way, right? To like lead with love, right? To give a fuck about people, irrespective of the color of their skin or, who they love, right? Like it's just at your core, right? And that's what they're doing, right? They're othering people for mental disabilities, for sexuality, for skin color, right? Things that we know verifiably do not have anything to do with intelligence or whether or not you're going to be a contributing member of society. So by getting in here and mixing it up with these folks, by highlighting every single issue, humanizing every single person that we can, and we accelerate the fall, as you've heard me say before, of authoritarianism. Get in your community, spend time with your people, love them. You don't have to let them, cross your boundaries. You don't have to let them eat your toast. You know what I mean? Definitely defend their fucking civil rights, right?
But you'll be sharing your toast with soldiers if you don't humanize them.
How far are we from a Fourth Amendment violation?
Third. We're already at fourth.
No, we're already at fourth. Yeah, third. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Executive order has touches of a Third Amendment argument about staging ICE operations on city property.
City property.
And I'm like, this is insane. Do you know how little the Third Amendment is discussed? I love when people get in there and start talking about, do you know what this is? I'm like, do you know what the Third Amendment is? That's like, but yeah.
They'll fucking learn fast when they start running out of oatmeal faster. That's a
We talked about that last week, though,
Yes.
right? That's part of the insidious nature of militarizing ICE. Is technically they're law enforcement. Technically, they're not the military. And you can see already that people on behalf of the regime are going to try to leverage that and claim exemptions to the Third Amendment and stuff like that.
Yeah, that and man, and this is why I say, actually, you know what? Everything that I'm thinking right now in this moment, I'm not going to say.
And just for the listener, I mean, you can Google it, of course, but just to connect the dots in a moment of the conversation, the Third Amendment is one that guarantees Americans the right to not have soldiers quartered in their house.
Yeah, I want to mention a few things about obviously the discussion at hand. Just a few comments that I've been thinking about as we're going along with this. Heroic work doesn't feel heroic, right? And I think we kind of have to understand that too when we look at ourselves in our situations. Being no hero knows that they're the hero in real life, right? This isn't any comic book. This isn't some kind of like graphic novel where you strap a big S to your chest and you go out and you save the woman in the burning building, right? It's not how that is. Real heroes don't think of it as heroic work. Real heroes just are morally and consciously consistent, right? And they understand that the letter of the law doesn't always embody the spirit of the law, right? Jefferson is attributed with saying, when tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes duty. And this is multiple enlightened thinkers, but also like David Hume being one of the best examples. This idea that we obey the law because the law tends to lean towards justice and stability and order, right? But when the law doesn't do this, he makes the argument it's our moral duty to disobey law, should we need to, in order to make sure that our conscience is consistent. And I think when I think of Irina, a different lens to view her situation is she was committing illegal acts. She was breaking the law. She was falsifying documents. She was smuggling people out of legally zoned areas, right? She did a lot of things she had to do in order to break the law. And while I'm not sitting here, and let me be very clear, so I don't get like a lawsuit or something, I'm not encouraging anyone to break the law. I'm simply saying that it's very interesting that this is also part of that earlier conversation about duty and conscience colliding, right? And I think we need to take this into consideration when we look at what's going on in our own country right now when it comes to ICE being overfunded and having unprecedented access to every single level of society. I can't think really of another agency in American history that has had so much blatant public tyrannical access. For any of you libertarians out there who might be listening, I hope you're pissed because this is
Right?
so antithetical to anything that you could possibly imagine. But also, I would argue it's also antithetical to the traditional American principles and values. Yeah, I just
Right.
want to throw those 2 cents out there.
No, I agree with you, right? I think in the realms of people having the conversations that we're having, we always talk about whether or not morality and legality are congruent, and we all know that they're often not. So let your duty be informed by your conscience and not the law. Let those be congruent, if nothing else, right? When I think of duty and conscience, in my mind, they're always congruent for me because and I'll give the same disclaimer. Not encourage you to break the law, but if you do, holler at me.
Okay.
I think more importantly too, find opportunities to practice your conscience, right? Like if you are faced with something super small, like at work or like, I don't know. I think this is important. I think adhering to your own internal principles and values is almost like a muscle, just like the brain, like when it comes to practicing and reading and maybe you play an instrument. I think, having a conscience and adhering to ideals and principles is the same thing in practicing them. Because if you can't uphold these ideals, when you're faced with taking $10 extra from the cash drawer, how are you going to do it when ICE is knocking down your door and taking your neighbors?
No.
It's something that must be
Big facts.
practiced.
I've already read at least one testimony of someone hiding their 7-year-old neighbor and their mother under the bed. This is fucking America. Isn't that 1941 Germany?
But
But
to the point of courage being contagious, we see that in a lot of these videos, right? More and more people are recognizing the strength in numbers, the strength in community, the strength in having each other's backs. And, when I see these videos, I just think about these guys jumping out of cars with their faces masked. It's like, y'all are so lucky that these people still respect law enforcement, because the only keeping your ass intact right now is that people are taking the chance that you're actually law enforcement, because the number of incompetent meal team gravy seal motherfuckers out there pretending like they know what the fuck they're doing,
Bro.
who are in really bad shape tactically, and like the citizenry is
And physically, we
saying,
may say so.
leave. all they're asking you to do is leave, and that's the worst that's happening to is you're getting embarrassed on the internet. Is kind of amazing.
Tearing an ACL, shoving your gun in your waistband with no holster, dropping it after that. Nearly right. I mean,
Weed.
how quickly it could turn into, but that's what they're hoping for, right? I mean, a little bit. It's.
I don't think
this is quite literally, like I was saying last time, as a double Dutch competition. Who is going to jump too early or too late and fuck up the rotation? And that's what you're saying. Like, is the administration going to do it? How do we get them to do it? How do we get them to misstep before they, finish clinching power? The lawmakers, corporations, law enforcement agencies,
Some huevos
are seating in mass ahead of time. Oh, and speaking of graphic novels, I didn't send it to our chat, but I will. For anybody who is apprehensive about reading or just don't like it, there is an On Tyranny as a graphic novel edition. You can get for $7 online. If you need a copy, let me know. I mean, my son reads at a higher level than his grade, but I just thought that was really an excellent option, especially when you look at illiteracy rates in this nation and the fact that even like with SNCC and the Black Panther Party and the birth of it out of Lowndes County, Alabama, a lot of people voted based on political symbol, and so I just think there's no shame in that. If you'd like to look at a graphic novel rather than one that's laden with words and history, you might not identify with it as easily. You can get it for like $7.
And legitimately, if you see this and you send me a message, I'll send you a fucking copy. I'm not I live on a regular man's salary, but if you are the type of cat to reach out and say like, hey, I'm gonna read this, it's important, I'll send you a copy. Now, look, that's the initial offer, right? If it starts getting too overwhelming, right, we get, I don't know, how many of it take to bankrupt me? Probably like 40. If like more than 40 of you respond to this, right?
$7.
I'm out of money. I'm out of cash, right? But be one of the first 40. I got your back.
If you send an email to disconpod, disconpod @gmail.com, and you include a receipt for a cash donation to your local food bank or $50 or more, I'll send you a free copy.
Yeah. And if you have kids that are, if you're civically engaged and maybe they don't want to read a whole lot, but it's important they get the lessons, give them a copy, man. It's not as gory as you might think something like that would be, but it is, I thought it was really, really dope option for an author to put out.
Right. And we're not ever going to pass on the opportunity. And I don't know, can we reach out to Mr. Snyder and just bring him on at this point?
Big
You know what I mean? Like, let's talk to Mr. Snyder and see if
I want to get there. I want to get there for sure.
Let's bring him on, because honestly, if you haven't read, and this is my once again stump for On Freedom, On Tyranny, right? By the way, we were out trick-or-treating with my daughter and my ex-wife, right? We're all out there together, and she's got a copy of On Tyranny out. She's reading it while we're trick-or-treating, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, well, I mean, I love that, right? And the kids are like, you're reading a book, and for those of you who don't have a copy, it's small, it's like a little figure, and so that was extra hilarious, right? She just got this tiny book out, but it's On Tyranny for trick or treating, and I just found that meaningful.
Got to stay reminded. There's an updated version as well that's sent to the chat, y'all. 20 lessons on the war and the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's back to the woman at hand here.
Yeah. Look, so I just want to do a little bit of reflection here. Well, I know we're almost done. This is actually honestly gone the time that normally does. I wore a uniform for 21 years. This woman wore a conscience. And what does that tell us about the definition of service? I think it tells us that it's a human condition. To go to fill the vacuum of government, the state failed, citizens acted, and in today's America, where money buys policy and lobbyists shape law, who fills the vacuum when the government stops serving the people? And we're in the middle of a government shutdown.
And you see people stepping out to fill the void across the board.
And,
proud of y'all.
And you see people hurting. You see people hurting in a way that they really shouldn't. If we're being honest with ourselves about where we are at, as missing 2 paychecks, the way that it's killing people, losing federal benefits, the way that it's killing people, should send a message to us personally about who we are as a country. That's my take on it. There's a biological constant, and what separates people who freeze from people who act. Is it faith? Is it duty? Is it anger? Or is it compassion?
Mm.
My argument is always for compassion, although I often act out of anger. So, what are your thoughts about this?
I think it's a little bit of all of it, right? I don't know. It's probably not an easier way to piss me off than to fuck with somebody I have compassion for, but go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a few of us on the panel who have a significant reservoir of anger to motivate us.
Yeah. Did you see Sean's comment? I see disorderly conduct in the bottom right hand corner. You're fucking right. You do. Wow. Wow.
Hey, look, I'm gonna wrap this real quick for you guys. Look, here's what I see when I look at Irina Sendler. I see a system that collapsed and a woman that did not agree to be a part of that collapse. She didn't tweet about it. She didn't raise money on fear. She just took professional responsibility and turned it into salvation for almost 2,000 fucking people. And I think when we look around today, when politicians are selling everything to donors, lobbyists are writing laws, and apathy is winning elections, it's on us to be the Irina Sendlers of our time. That is our fucking responsibility. We got to step up the same way that she did. I am so looking forward for the next 3 episodes to hear these similar profiles from you guys about who stepped up for humanity.
I think Jesse's probably the least angry of us here.
Yeah, I don't get angry very often.
Let's hear
I do want to mention one thing real quick that you know, Mayhem, you said for people to step up and be the Irene Sendlers. I think the answer is if everyone steps up, then no one has to be the hero, right? Those heroes arise in times of desperation. Heroes arise in times of extreme situations, of despotism, of that's when they arise. We can stay off such times if everyone rules by their own conscience, right? If everyone is consistent with how they adhere to their principles and their values and stand up for the individuals who are being oppressed in a society, then we would stay off despotism so that heroes wouldn't be necessary. Which is why I think we go through periods with American history where we don't need heroes until they arise, right? Harriet Tubman being a really good example. She arose to the occasion because tyranny was so prevalent in the South that she needed to do something. Had our founding fathers had the ability to actually address the institution of slavery at the signing of the Declaration and Constitution itself and not like acquiesce to the South, then maybe there wouldn't have been a Harriet Tubman in the first place.
Yeah, I agree.
Couple
And like,
things.
it's funny because it's like, what if it makes a hero, right? I mean, it's really subjecting yourself to extreme risks for the most part. And out of necessity for generally a a selfless reason. And so, and like you said, so if we all step up, right? If we all adhere to a consistent moral framework or our conscience, and then make our government adhere to their obligations. I mean, force them to be restrained by the document that founded this nation and that affords civil liberties to all people on this soil, then nobody has to be put at extreme risk. It's like the sit-ins in the civil rights movement. It's you can't arrest us all, you can't kill us all. Fred Hampton is famous for you can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution. And that is persistent throughout the globe, throughout humanity, and throughout history. And so, quite literally, you can see our conscience and the collective expression of morality borne out through numbers and action. So, I think that is important. We don't have to force people to put themselves at risk because through collective action and collective expression of morality and conscience, we can reduce the risk on any number of any one person. And then there is no hero, right? Because there doesn't have to be, because everybody has decided to act in a way that is going to be reflected well.
No, that just, you guys are, this is why this is my favorite time of the week, every single week, right? You know how long I'm going to be thinking about that actively, Jesse? Just this idea that you guys are discussing right now, like if everyone steps up, we don't need a fucking hero, right? There's a I'm sorry, and I'm definitely exposing myself as a nerd now because you guys have seen me on the fucking camera the entire time. To already know this, but diffusion of responsibility is a big portion of I think what you're talking about psychologically, right? And so it's like, oh well, that's not my responsibility, right? And then if everybody says that it's somebody's responsibility, right? So yeah, we diffuse the responsibility, and it becomes a thing. It's kind of where you see, and I think there's probably a better way. I'm not a psychologist, right? But there's probably a better way or an even closer way to connect this. But this phenomenon is the exact same thing that is affecting the American. Oh, and it's something I was exposed to in high school, and I was like, so like I'm the guy that like if I'm taking my cart back and I see a cart, I'm taking that cart, right? I'm gonna be part of the solution, right? At least a little bit, so as not to diffuse responsibility.
I think a couple things. I mean, I like the idea that you expressed, Jesse, about if everybody does it, nobody has to be the hero. But then that got me thinking, and I think sometimes the hero is a retroactive narrative we put on things, right? And we know the name of Harriet Tubman, but we don't know the name of all the homeowners that were stops along the Underground Railroad. We don't know the name of the other hundreds of people who participated there, right? And we don't know the names. Obviously, I mean, they're written down somewhere, but we as individuals don't know the names of all the people who stormed the beaches in Normandy. We don't know the names of all the Marines on Guadalcanal. We don't know all the names of those Polish cavalry officers who charged Nazi tanks on horseback, because during the Blitzkrieg, their military was not. They had not modernized the
This is not
military.
Iraq back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
so,
Dude,
and so the thing that thinks, not to just to riff on your title, and also to connect this back to the idea of retaining your own humanity. That's the superpower, right? What gives you the impetus, what gives you the conscious, what gives you your conscience, what gives you the moral power to be the hero in the moment is to retain your own humanity and recognize the humanity in others. And so, to riff, I would say like, humanity is the hero, right? Our humanity is the thing that makes
That's
us.
fact.
So, heroes of humanity, humanities as hero. I call myself a humanist. You guys have heard me say it before. Have you met human beings? Human beings are not this other that people would have you believe. This they, and remember, anybody that tells you to distrust them, that is an attack on you. That is an attack on your humanity. You think they're attacking this other person, but they're really trying to do is destroy you, destroy your humanity, destroy your soul, destroy your unpredictability, make you compliant, turn you into a copa.
And their success depends on it, right? It literally depends on destroying your humanity. Now, I mean, I might be a bit of a cynic and definitely a little bit of a skeptic, but when people are trying to convince me of something, my immediate question is why? Well, what do you want from me? What is your angle? I'm sure that comes from a variety of life experiences. Regardless, it's like if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to take it, right? If your humanity didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to take it. Their success depends on your acquiescence, your willingness to negotiate your humanity and thereby give away the rights of everybody else. And so I think that is an excellent point. And it sort of just goes back into when we're talking about building up communities. We've talked frequently about it becomes much harder to perpetrate sheer brutality on somebody who's fed your kids, who has taken your grandma to get medicine, like all the ways in which neighbors help each other, and that keeps our humanity connected. And I think that's sort of one of the. I mean, obviously, it's important for people to eat and get medical care and all the things that mutual aid pods do for each other and for what neighbors do for each other. But the underlying part of that is it helps us keep our humanity intact and see them as something other than red and blue, or white and black, or immigrant and citizen. All the ways they like to put us in boxes, which, I don't know about y'all, but I mean, we frequently listen to music in another language. And I speak a little Spanish, but I don't speak French, but we still listen to it because, these things transcend language and the barriers that we have put upon ourselves as humans across the globe. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why seeing brutality against children evokes a visceral reaction in people, because we are all connected and you can't unconnect us.
Good.
Except with an absolute malicious intent and acquiescence.
Yeah, and I mean, damn, Brother Ali says it, and Uncle Sam gone damn. If you see, and I'm paraphrasing, because I don't know the exact word.
Uncle Sam got a 4 million brown body a day habit.
That's another. I mean, there's plenty of bars from that motherfucker, like, no doubt. But he specifically in the context of what we're talking about, he makes a comment. They try to get you to lose your soul. They only strengthen yours and lose their own. Right. And then I think it's very much, it's so relevant. I think you guys you said this beautifully. And this is, I think about these conversations that we have. I think about these topics and I just never do as well as I do listening to y'all. Right. I just don't.
It reminds me of one of the other quotes that you were going to get to put on your wall. And it's a man that has a why to live can get through like almost anyhow. I think that just speaks a lot to what humans, I think, really mean to each other, right? In the context of family and friends. I think you see it even with this group. When people are relying on you and you have somebody you love, when there's a why to live, people will and can and do find a way to how pretty frequently. And I think you see that in communities that suffer from oppression and war and genocide and starvation and disease across the world, man. Culture survives, humanity survives. And at the end of the day, I think we just have to keep that eye on the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, from my perspective, you guys are the precise people that I would like to survive the revolution with, right? Like, let's just get together. We set up a fucking camp, right? I'll handle security. You handle IT, Jesse. You know what I mean? Like,
Perfect.
Yeah. No, we're jumping to a lot of conclusions here. Like that we've got Wi-Fi, but you know what? That's fine. That's fine for me. In my revolutionary head, that's how it's gonna go. Right? It's Starlink, baby. I don't fucking know. Point is, I hope that no matter what, I get to surround myself with people like all of you, right? Because you guys are all, I mean, demonstrably good human beings that give a fuck about other people. If we say that this podcast is about anything, can we say that it's about thinking about something other than ourselves for an hour of fucking?
But it's also thinking about ourselves, right? I mean, it is. It's preserving humanity.
You fucking ruined everything I said.
I'm just saying, it is.
No, I know. I heard.
If you can't get past not hating other people, do that as self-preservation, guys.
No, not fair. Yeah,
Right.
for all you narcissists out there, listen to
What?
save yourself.
But and to save the world for your kids, man. The world, is civil liberties and civil society. I don't know, man. I think that there are some people. It's like what we were talking about earlier about what gets people to act and make those decisions. Some people are going to make different decisions based on their particular circumstances and their, whether or not they have kids and their experiences.
Most people just try to ho.
I think my first point would be there is a role for everybody in resilience and to oppression. But I think your decisions are naturally going to be informed by what risks you can or cannot or feel willing to be able to take. And so if you can't convince yourself to take risks for other people, take them for your own. Take them for yourself. Take them for your children.
So thanks for joining us, folks. It's been good talking at you, as it always is. And, as the subject is to be, just be aware, the times may require a little disorderly conduct.
Thank you for listening to the Disorderly Conduct Podcast, a production of the Public Integrity Network. We believe that the first step to taking back our democracy is getting money out of politics. Come find us at moneyoutofpolitics.org and we'll put you to work. In the meantime, get involved in your community. Volunteer at a soup kitchen. Start a rideshare service. Go to school board meetings. Anything you can to make sure this government remembers that their powers derive from the consent of the governed.